Ladies and gentlemen, this is Hamid Jassim, host of the Black Side Show. Evan Slaughter, former U.S. Army reconnaissance who received the Purple Heart in Afghanistan, comes home to go through the darkest times of his life, from an opium addiction to becoming a comedian that puts a smile on everyone's face. To hear more of their stories, kindly support us on the link below on Patreon with whatever you can. Enjoy the show.
I'm at war, like that's what this is. People are gonna die here.
Every time a car bomb blew up at my checkpoint in Iraq, that was not the biggest fear for me. The biggest fear for me was for the secondary car bomb.
Only thing I remember is hearing a loud boom. And as he started backing the truck up, he started to lose consciousness.
Wow.
And we didn't know what happened. We just know someone hit an IED and someone's dead, right? So we're going out there, we're on our way out there, and I'm the gunner in the lead truck of the convoy. I'm on an M240 Bravo in a stand-up turret. At that time, they had Crow trucks and stand-up turrets. So the Crow truck, is the common remotely operated weapon station, which you gun from inside the truck. So it's got the gun on top, and you're basically looking at a screen and a joystick, and you're gunning from inside the truck. But you also have a bunch of trucks that are stand-up, where you're standing up out of the turret. And I was standing up out of the turret. And we come across a wadi, and as soon as we hit the wadi, the only thing I remember is hearing a loud boom, almost as if you're driving past an 18-wheeler and all the tires on that truck blow out at one time. That's what it sounded like. It was like a loud pop, boom. It's not your typical, in the movies, like, it was a boom. And I remember this chemical sensation, man, like burning. You couldn't breathe.
Today I have my friend Evan Slaughter, who's a former Army reconnaissance guy who has actually rised up through the comedy on social media. I myself love what he has been presenting so far. And the reason why I brought this podcast to everybody, because I feel the story behind this humor is a lot bigger than we think. So I'm pretty excited. And Evan, welcome to the Black Side Show.
Man, I appreciate it. Glad to be here, dude.
Yeah, bro. I got to tell you, man, your videos are amazing. Everything you've been doing with comedy sketches out there, making fun of all of us out there, right? CrossFitters, people who are with a New Year resolution. However, I want to go back to your story. I want to start from the beginning of your life. I know there's a lot of trauma in your life. There's a lot of challenges and a lot of things you've been through in your life, and specifically your military career. I'm this guy that saw the other version of you, the badass version, right?
Right.
That was in the military, the guy that was fighting in Afghanistan. And it actually made me feel good about myself, right? Because I'm not the only guy that looked different than when I was still in the military. All right. So I'm excited, bro. And I want to go back to the beginning of your life. Before joining the military, what really got you to go into this line?
I want to say it's not like one of those, like, my dad served, my brother served. I was meant for me to serve. I did have, both grandparents on both sides of my family served, but that was in a time when, I think you almost had to whenever one of my grandparents served, getting drafted, and it was just kind of a little bit more common, but we didn't come from this big, our family serves in the military type environment. I really just kind of got, I had that yearning that they do talk about, like part of me always wanted to join, and I knew I wanted to go into some kind of combat MOS. I mean, I'd been to college, was doing that, had a good job working at a gym as a personal trainer, which a lot of people don't know because I don't look like a personal trainer now, so I don't talk about it, but I was an exercise science major in college. So, it's funny because I do know what I'm doing with the exercise part, and I'm sure we'll get to that, but yeah, I just joined, dude. I was 22 years old. I was like, this is my time. And I just went and signed up. And I went to different recruiters, Marine Corps first, and they made me send in pictures of tattoos and all this kind of stuff, and it was going to be like 8 months before I could go to boot camp. So I went to the Army, and they were like, we can ship you out, in 2 months. Just pass this, do this, and you'll be gone. I was like, let's do it, So that's how I kind of got into it. Knew I wanted to go infantry the whole route,
At what year did you join the Army?
It was 2010. 2010.
So, damn, man. So you joined the military right after I was out of the fight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Different
I left
battle.
Iraq in 08.
Yeah.
Damn. And we're the same age.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, that's crazy.
You just served in different areas. I never got to experience the Iraq part.
Yeah, I mean, Iraq wasn't anything special. You didn't miss anything special. It was just as messed up as it could be. Where Afghanistan. But so when you joined the military, you joined the military. What was the goal for you when you joined? What were you trying to do, or what goals were you trying to achieve when you joined?
Dude, it was that typical be the baddest motherfucker out there. I had that energy. I was 22 years old. I was in good shape at the time. And I wanted to go see what I could accomplish. I got duped by the recruiter, because I always heard, infantry. You hear infantry and then you hear airborne infantry, and that sounds really cool, So I was like, he basically guaranteed me airborne school, and then I got to basic and found out that was a bunch of bullshit. I didn't have a guarantee slot to go to airborne school. So I picked up, because I was in good shape, I was able to get the 18 X-ray contract, a chance to go to selection. I don't know if they still do 18 X-ray, but it was big whenever I was in, and that guaranteed me to go to airborne school. So I picked it up, man, and I was like, I'm going to take this just so I can go to airborne school and then see how far I can go. And ended up going to SOPSI in selection and failed the last event in selection, but got picked up by that, Lurch unit, and it turned out to be a good thing. I was always told, say yes. I had a buddy of mine go, he said, if they offer you anything, say yes to it. So I did,
So if you were offered to be a truck driver, you would have said yes to it.
Well, I guess whenever it comes to, like, when you get in, you got your MOS, if they say, hey, do you want to go check out this school? Or, hey, do you want to go, if it seems like a good opportunity, don't ever turn it down. That's how I got the 18 X-ray contract, is because guys they got into infantry school, and were so beat down by the 14 weeks in infantry school. They were like, I don't want to go do another, 3 months up in, God forbid I pass selection and get in the Q course, and I'm in that for the next year and a half. So they dropped their contracts, and it gave guys like me an opportunity to go.
I would say that failure is a scary thing for many guys at that age that are going through things.
Big time.
Failing Special Forces selection, what was the reasons that you had to fail that?
Dude, a lot of it for me, I think, was I was not prepared mentally, if that makes sense. I was always, I'm not a very tall guy. I'm like 5'5.5" on a good day, which, there's plenty of people in special operations that aren't big. A lot of them aren't, but I was new. I was green. I went from infantry school. As soon as I graduated infantry, got on a bus, went to the other side of Fort Benning, and went right through airborne school. So while everybody was going home on their 2 weeks leave, before they go to their unit, I was getting on a bus and going to airborne school. Did 3 weeks at airborne school, graduated that same day, got on a bus and went to Fort Bragg. I didn't get any R&R until probably 7 or 8 months after joining the military. So I think mentally I just wasn't tough enough. It was the rucking. It was the rucking that got me, dude.
Dude, I would never. I worked in Camp McCall for years, and when I used to drive like 6 o'clock in the morning, I'll see the guys rucking in there from selection.
Yeah.
And I would hear that they were rucking like since 2 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
Carrying all these 50 caliber stuff, boxes of ammo, and they're like zombies. And I cannot imagine, like, there is no really a workout, or there's not a WOD out there, right? Toughness. I saw guys who looked like zombies, and they were moving differently. And
Yeah.
I couldn't. I still remember the most painful thing I saw. It was actually two soldiers been wrecking like all night, and it was like 6:30 in the morning. The light was coming out, and they had an ammo box which they both had to carry,
Yeah.
and they also have a 50 caliber
Right.
that one has to carry with the other hand.
Right.
And they would go, and then they will stop at a certain point, and they switch over. They'll hand over the 50 caliber to the other. That was the most painful thing I ever saw. So I can't imagine like what you saw. Like there is no judgment in this, right? Really, like anything could be your enemy. Could be your body. Could be
Yeah.
your mental status. It could be anything. Um,
Yeah.
how what was your feeling inside? Like, did you feel like you were defeated when you felt it? Did you feel like you were disappointed in yourself? Like what went inside of you during that time?
So the thing was this, I always told myself, just don't quit. Just don't quit. That was my thing. Just don't be the guy that goes up and says, I can't do it. I'm out. That's called a voluntary withdrawal. You know, and if you're a voluntary withdrawal, meaning that you volunteer to quit, you don't ever get another shot at it. Now, you can be an involuntary withdrawal, which is what I was because I didn't meet the time hack. But I don't make excuses, but part of the 18 X-ray thing, which was tough, which a lot of guys that were active duty that you linked up with during selection would criticize this part of it too. 18 X-ray was tough because you go through SOPSI. Not everybody that goes through selection goes through SOPSI. So only the 18 X-rays do, who are the guys that are new to the military. And SOPSI is 21 days at Camp McCall, and it's like a mini selection. It's like supposed to
Yeah,
get you ready for selection, but it's
yeah,
pretty much selection minus some of the way they do things. You're still doing land nav at the STAR course. You're still doing rucks and having to meet time hacks on rucks. You're still doing the 6 mile run. That's basically or 5 mile run that most of it's in sand. You got to pass that to move on to selection. So I passed SOPSI, right? And we get back to Fort Bragg after we pass SOPSI, and you're broken off, okay? I was broken off after SOPSI. I mean, it ends with like a 18-mile ruck march. And then you get on the bus, you go back to Fort Bragg. I was supposed to have, because my last name starts with an S, I was supposed to have about a month before I went back to selection. But some guys got kicked out of the course while we were gone for, leaving and going and traveling without permission. So they bump up, and I'm like the last name they call to go to selection, and selection's a week later. So I got back on the bus, had to get off, and went right back out to Camp McCall after getting getting smoked at
yeah,
SOPSI, went right back out to selection like, fuck. My birthday was coming up. I was thinking about that on the ruck. I was like, God, my birthday's coming up. I'm out here doing this bullshit. I could be at home on the, and all that stuff goes through your head. And then they do these random way stations. And I was on the ruck march, right? I got, I've got my gear set up. They're looking for people who are dumping water and, whatever, trying to limit their weight. And the guy in front of me, they stopped him and got him for not having any water. I mean, we were about halfway through the ruck. He was supposed to have water left. His ruck didn't even weigh what it was supposed to weigh. So obviously they checked me because I was pretty close to that guy. So I had to stop halfway through, take my shit off, weigh it. I passed the weigh station. And as soon as I took that first step leaving the weigh station, I was like, I'm smoked, dude. My legs are, your body starts trying to rest as soon as you stop and take all that stuff off. So anyways, guys are, quitting in front of you. The truck's driving by, picking up guys that are quitting. And it's tough, it's tough. But I didn't quit. I finished the ruck march. I just came in later than I was supposed to. And they don't tell you how much time you're supposed to do it in either. So it makes it a
wow.
little tough.
So when you like, let's say when you left selection, you felt broken inside. You were going through a hard time. What was your next step at that point?
So basically, then you just wait for orders. A lot of guys were coming up on orders since you're at Fort Bragg to go the 82nd. You're airborne qualified, you're infantry. The 82nd is pretty much always taking guys. So you get moved to basically hold over, and you wait for orders. And a few guys were getting orders for these Lurch units, long range surveillance, and everybody that was, all the cadre and stuff that were working, the SOPSI program, they were talking a big game about it. Like, this is a once in a lifetime opportunity, this kind of a new unit that they formed for this period of time. And they were like, you'd be a fool if you don't take these orders, So
Yeah.
I came up on those Lurch unit orders and went to Fort Hood.
Fort Hood, Texas.
Fort Hood, Texas. Fort Hood in the hood.
In the hood, yeah. Fort Hood is a whole different animal. I don't know if you've ever been, Micah.
I've heard a lot of stories about it, yeah.
Oh, man. Fort Hood is just a different
not
wild
great.
animal. Right? It's not great. That's the truth.
It's not great.
Well, when I was doing the PSYOP training, when I was training people all over the country, I would go like Fort Campbell, Fort Hood. Fort Hood, it was just a shit show, man. The base where it's located, it's a massive base, by the way. Massive.
60-something thousand troops, yeah.
Holy crap. It's big. How many hours you can drive in Fort Hood without
Bro.
It's like Fort Hood is so big that you can drive for hours and hours inside of that base.
Yeah.
Is that true?
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to the ranges, that makes total sense because they got so much land out there in Texas. Like, when you go to the range, you fucking go to the range, It's out there, bro.
Yeah, like I wonder what is the biggest base in the United States, right? And it's like Fort Hood was just big, man. It was massive. Like, I've been to Fort Polk, Louisiana. Fort Polk, Louisiana, that is one of the most miserable places in the planet Earth. I don't know if you've ever been. Have you been to Tigerlands?
I've been to Fort Polk when we were gearing up to go to Afghanistan. We didn't go to
It depends
NTC.
what month you were there. It depends what month you were in.
It was
Fort
summertime.
Polk.
It was hot.
Dude.
Yeah. No. It was winter because we deployed.
That's why you're not complaining.
It was cold, yeah.
That's why you're not complaining. Because if you went into Fort Polk, Louisiana during the summer, you would have hate your life. You would have looked forward to deploying because the humidity in Fort Polk, Louisiana is so bad.
Yeah. They have like a lot of bugs and stuff too.
Dude, it's like you can't even, it's like there's a separation between your skin and your uniform. And you can't handle yourself. Fort Polk, Louisiana, that's where I used to train people. They will actually be looking forward to going to Iraq or Afghanistan. Wow. They'll be like, I can't wait to deploy. When are we going?
Fuck Louisiana. yeah, I'm out.
Louisiana, and you hear the alligators at night. It's just, if they thought about shutting down Gitmo Bay, the prison, they should move it to Fort Polk because it was so miserable. That's how Fort Polk, Louisiana. And you go in the winters, some of the most beautiful weather out there. You go there in the summer. I mean, dude, it is like it's a mental. It's hot, humid as hell. You're sweating with an inside your uniform. Like you got sweat everywhere. You know what I mean? It's like you will feel your balls sweating. That's what Fort Polk, Louisiana is, right?
Wow.
If you ever served in Fort Polk, Louisiana, you'll feel your balls sweating, right? Because how humid that place is.
Yeah, dude, you gotta use the porta johns, and the porta shitters are like steam boxes.
It's like, really, right? Like it has smoke comes out of it.
I'm telling you, dude.
That's true.
You don't want to be in there.
Oof.
You don't want to be in there. That's why I was like, if they move the prison, they should move it to Fort Polk. They should not ever send anybody in Fort Polk,
I agree.
That's how. So moving back into your story, like at what point you started actually? How did you find the opportunity to go to reconnaissance, to become a reconnaissance guy?
So it came down on orders, and it was good because if you look at the Lurch, I don't know what the right terminology is, but the requirements to be in a Lurch unit, we call it Lurch, long range surveillance. It was actually first, I think, started during the Vietnam era, and it was LRPS, long range platoon. Or I can't remember what it stood for, something like that. But that's kind of was based off of. There's supposed to be a selection for LRPS.
Yeah.
So you go to, and we were told that there was going to be a selection, and it's basically kind of like, selection to get into Ranger school, like pre-Ranger. You do a swim, you do a ruck. It's a little bit more basic than selection for SF. Obviously, it's a series of tests. Maybe take 3 days. You do it over 3 days. It's just proving that you're qualified to do it. You got to have a certain GT score. But because guys, they were giving orders to guys that were, getting out of selection or any part of the Q course, they knew that they could meet the PT and they could meet the GT score. So I actually didn't have to do the little selection process to be a part of the Lurch unit because they were gearing up for deployment. And we didn't know that till we got down there. But they needed guys. You had to be infantry, you had to be airborne qualified, but they needed guys. And to promote down there, they're big, in the Ranger and Doctrine program. They usually have the Ranger tab over their crest. A lot of guys came from 75th Ranger Regiment to be a part of the unit. So it was a good opportunity. And I just did what my buddy told me when I joined, and I said yes, and I went down there, and it turned out to be it was really a huge deal. I mean, it was awesome. Not a big unit, 65 guys, I think. Hell, they were sending guys to like Halo school at one point out of there. So the schools you could go to, all the reconnaissance stuff that you could be a part of, it was a great opportunity.
What was the most difficult things about being a reconnaissance guy?
Man, so the most difficult thing that I ever had to do, and there was a lot of it, but they picked a select few at one point to go and do this training in the Gila National Forest, which is in New Mexico. And it was like over 3 days, and they had a National Guard unit, and we were actually picked to do a tracking school, urban tracking, and out in the woods type tracking, like you're following an individual, because that became big, I guess, in the war on terror, after someone would plant an IED, trying to figure out who it was, right, and getting back to them. So they had us, chose us, and it was a civilian-led school, guys that were former operators. I think we had a Marine reconnaissance dude in there. We had some SF guys who started this school, and the big test at the end was go to Gila National Forest in New Mexico, and we covered probably 70 kilometers at altitude in 3 days.
Wow.
I mean, guys were falling out at the end, and then at the end, when we finally tracked, the quarry is what they called it, the enemy basically, to where they wanted us to track them, there was like a big, fight, shootout. People were getting hurt. This person's down with this, so you're doing med stuff. You're having to, track 70 kilometers through the woods and then fight. It was really good training, but it smoked me, dude.
It's crazy how that the United States military training has modified itself over time after the Iraq war and the Afghanistan war starts, right? Like we talked about this in a previous podcast, but it's kind of nuts to see that how outdated the training the U.S. military had previously, because they were training on the Vietnam era kind of thing. And then when they started this guerrilla warfare, Iraq and Afghanistan, that they had to change the training. I mean, I ended up being a trainer, a PSYOP instructor, and we had like a Navy SEAL, Clark Impastato, in the previous shows that talked about the training as a SEAL, right? And it's kind of crazy to see like how these wars had changed the way we think in a way. You see what I mean? Like the training had to be changed. Everybody had to do something different.
Well, wasn't Iraq the first time we did any kind of urban warfare in recent history?
I'll tell you the difference. I think, Evan could relate to Afghanistan later on, but I mean, I think the last war was 1991, the first Gulf War, which was a conventional warfare. It was an army versus army, infantry kind of war. I think the guerrilla warfare, that was 2003 Iraq. That was the first time the United States entered the guerrilla warfare kind of thing.
Right.
And you just really have to train yourself differently. You're not fighting a tank anymore. You're not fighting an armored vehicle anymore. You're not fighting an infantry unit anymore. You're fighting small element of individuals that can cost you damage. It's a hit and run law. It's a hit and run law, and it could cost you a lot of damage. So I feel like the training changed way over time. I mean, I've been out for like a couple of years now, but I've seen that we really learned a lot from our mistakes at these wars. We learned a lot of what we're not doing right. And now the next generation is actually training is way better than what the previous generation was doing. Yeah. So when you left reconnaissance school and You where what year were your first? Now we're gonna go into your deployment. What year did you deploy?
So we deployed in June, or excuse me, June 2011.
June of 2011. I mean, Afghanistan was pretty hot at that point.
Yeah, it was literally, I think, as we got into country. So Osama bin Laden was killed in May of
Holy crap.
2011. And you can fact check me on that, but I'm pretty sure it was May. So we get into country and boom, this happens, and where we were, stationed, deployed to, was on the border of Pakistan. So we were in Spin Buldak, Afghanistan, which is like you'd go into Kandahar and then we would drive 70 kilometers to the border of Pakistan. And I looked it up later, and I think it was about 225 miles from Islamabad, Pakistan, which is where they killed Osama bin Laden at. So it was
Wow.
hot.
So when you got into Afghanistan, like this was your first time out of the country?
First time.
So how did you feel, man? Like I wonder. Like for me, I was at war. I was born there. My whole life been at war. How did that go for you when you were like heading towards Afghanistan, heading towards war? Like what was going through your mind at that point?
Did you know, it's funny? I mean, I was young. I think I turned 24 in Afghanistan. So I was, you don't realize how old you are until you get older, is what I think. Now that I'm in my 30s, I was like, damn, I was young at 24. But at 24, I felt like an adult. I mean, obviously I was an adult, but I just didn't know, the risk just wasn't there. I wasn't concerned about it. I was around a good group of guys. It was what, you go in with this mindset of like I didn't know what to expect, to be honest with you. And that was kind of like my entire military career. I mean, I just would go into these situations and you find a group of guys and you start, forming a brotherhood. And I think that's what makes it so much easier.
So you were just rolling with it. Like you're
just rolling with it.
Kind of like whatever. And I'll just go whatever it is. And when you first got in country, how did you feel? Like, what did you think when you first got in there?
Well, it was a shock to it's a culture shock. So what we did was went right into Kandahar. Well, actually, we stopped, I think, for a week, and I always forget this little country, but it was some little country right outside. There's an Air Force base there, and you're there for like 2 weeks, and they give you the proper body armor and stuff like that, and they actually give you a little ticket where you can get one beer, on the base, and our command didn't allow us to even have that on so you're like doing MRAP training and they turn you upside down in a simulation MRAP, so you're kind of like getting accustomed to the weather, the environment a little bit, and then you jump on a C-17 or C-130, whatever you flying on or whatever they have available for you to fly in on. And then you go from there. It's a 2-hour flight or something into, and you kit on and all that. So when you land, but you're landing in Kandahar, a big base in Kandahar that at this time had been well established. Wow. There's places to get your hair cut. There's a fucking Chili's restaurant, for crying, but they only serve like 2 or 3 things, but there's like a Chili's, the boardwalk's got it all going. So it was kind of, but it was the drive, it's the move from Kandahar. Like now you're in Kandahar, you're on this base. Now there's mortar attacks and stuff like that, but you're on this base. It was when we moved from Kandahar down to where, our FOB, our forward operating base in Spin Buldak, where it kind of got a little bit more real.
Got you.
So what was your mission while you were there?
Well, our mission, that's kind of a good question to ask. It was a lot, they would pass down a lot of information as it kind of came to us. I ended up being attached to the personnel security detachment. So I was a part of a team with 5 or 6 other guys that would protect the senior commanding officer everywhere he went. So I was fortunate to get a little bit more information. But we did a lot of drug, busted poppy fields. I mean, we actually, I always get this fact wrong. It was like the 5th largest drug bust. I think during the war, we found like 50,000 pounds of black tar opium where they were moving it through a cave system. And we set it on fire. We took it down to this village and we burned it all, And so we would do a lot of that at first. There was, within our FOB, there was a group of what they called OGA, which stands for other government agencies, but I really think it was CIA guys. And they were flying from our little FOB, definitely into Pakistan. And it was probably us providing a little bit of cover for that internal group to go do what they were doing, because they were 225 miles from Islamabad, Pakistan. And they would fly on this little black helicopter at night and come back early in the morning, all during dark. So I don't know for sure, but my theory is they probably were involved some way. Yeah, that's a pretty decent little helicopter flight. That's the right range for a helicopter without us being in Pakistan. Wow. So I think a lot of what we did was kind of provide some cover by running these other missions for them to go into Pakistan. That's just my theory.
Hey, something I've always wondered about these drug interdiction missions when you confiscate all these drugs and set them on fire and everything. Do you have to worry about exposure and being popped on your analysis or something if you're in the smoke or whatever?
They did one drug test while I was over there. Breathing in the smoke, I don't know, is going to really cause you to pop. It was the hash. They had a lot of hash over there. Wow. So some guys, I think, maybe one dude got in trouble for using hash, while we were there during the
now,
one.
Did he actually use it, or was he just near it when it was burning?
I think he was actually using it, yeah.
Oh, that's too bad.
He had to help the Afghan economy, bro. I mean,
that's where you get it from, apparently.
Right? Like, he had to help the Afghan economy. He was trying to do it good, but so that's crazy, man. Like, did you feel like at one point you'd be like, shit, how much drugs these people have, right? Like, it's a lot of.
Oh, dude. I mean. We get into my story later where I talk about my opiate addiction, but looking back now, like, that's the biggest amount of opiates I've ever been around in my life. I remember carrying, they said, at the end of the day, the street value of what we confiscated and destroyed was like $300 or $400 million is what I remember here. I mean, that's a ton of money, And I remember there was one, we're moving these bags, big trash bags of this stuff to the burn pile. And there was one bag that was like a Walmart size shopping bag that had a chunk of it in it. And like, I grabbed that one to go carry to the burn pile. And there, for a minute, I was like, damn, this is probably like $50,000, like, let's put this in my cargo pocket and send it back home and make some money. But then
welcome to Afghanistan.
Like, Slaughter, throw that on the burn pile. Like, damn.
Yeah, I mean, Afghanistan, it's known for that. Like, Afghanistan is known to be, that's the biggest, country in the world that does that kind of crap, man. They got all this
crap, yeah.
I mean, it's one of the main reasons why Osama Bin Laden went there first too. All the money and the income and the money he was making there just from that, in the business of selling opium and cocaine and all kind of stuff. I mean, damn, man.
Yeah, because you can do whatever you want over there pretty much, right? When there's not a foreign country invading you.
You do, man. That's one thing about Afghanistan. It's a whole different animal, right? And it's crazy how to think. I mean, look, in Iraq, we never had this issue. Believe it or not, we never had a drug problem in Iraq. The biggest thing was ever in Iraq was alcohol. That's all it is. As soon as Iran started like really infiltrating Iraq, that's when people started learning about meth and crystal meth and cocaine and stuff. And because Iran, Afghanistan area, it's known for this.
Now, aren't Afghans pretty devout Muslims?
Yeah, they are. I mean,
so how do they justify producing the drugs?
To be honest with you, that is the biggest thing. They kind of like consider this to be like funding towards whatever, right?
Okay.
Um,
So the
Yeah,
ends
towards the
justify the
ultimate
means.
goal, yeah.
you'll be
Makes
surprised.
sense.
A lot of these warlords that do drug deals don't use it. You'll be surprised. A lot of these people don't just do it for the fact like they want to just get high. No, in Afghanistan they do it because it's a business.
Right.
It's
Oh,
a
yeah.
historical business,
It's
and
their
they make
livelihood.
tons of money out of it. I mean, these guys are millionaires from selling it, whether it's Pakistan, whatever they can smuggle it to, right? So yeah, Afghanistan is just a different animal.
So they're killing us with the drugs, and then they're using the drug money to also kill us.
Yeah, pretty much. That's what they do, right?
Wow.
Yeah, that's what they do, man. And so I want to go deep into the deployment with you. You deployed and you went into Afghanistan, and then you got to some incident where you guys lost somebody. And I want you to take me in details, really how that incident, it kind of got to be scary. I'm sure it had changed a lot of part of your life to this day.
Right.
And especially it's difficult to lose somebody in combat and lose a life, and the trauma and everything that comes with it. So what happened back in Afghanistan?
So it was really like basically right when we moved from Kandahar to our fob, and we're replacing the unit that's there, which was actually our sister unit. I think it was another Lurch unit out of Fort Bragg. They take you through, you spend a week or two with them, changing over who's in charge. So we would go out with their PSD guys and their colonel with our colonel, and they would just show us the village, introduce us to all the people. So you're in that process while at the same time our Lurch unit that's there is doing their deal. So they're going to these various checkpoints where we would rotate out on these checkpoints and pull security on these checkpoints. And I remember, we were still working with the unit that we were replacing. So that's how new we were into the country. And I remember getting, everybody's yelling and running and said, we got a KIA, and I had to think for a minute, like, oh, damn, that means killed in action. Someone's just been killed. And you never think like, until it happens, you got to remind yourself, like, I'm at war, like that's what this is. People are going to die here. I could die here. It becomes real at that moment. So we get the call, and obviously with it being the first KIA, it's, we hear it's a dude from our unit. We don't know who it is yet. All we do is spin up in our trucks and go out. And I remember actually the guy, I think the platoon sergeant for their PSD group, right at the last minute, he tells our driver, hey, I'll drive. I know where this is. I'll take us right there to it faster. Don't worry about driving. So he swaps with the guy who was supposed to drive right at the last minute. And we've got, a mine roller attached to our MRAP, which ends up being huge. But we go out there, we hit this little route into the desert. We're off in the sand. And our job basically was to go pull security for the incident. And we didn't know what happened. We just know someone hit an IED and someone's dead, right? So we're going out there. We're on our way out there. And I'm the gunner in the lead truck of the convoy. I'm on an M240 Bravo and a stand-up turret. At that time, they had Crow trucks and stand-up turrets. So the Crow truck, is the common remotely operated weapon station, which you gun from inside the truck. So it's got the gun on top, and you're basically looking at a screen and a joystick, and you're gunning from inside the truck. But you also have a bunch of trucks that are stand-up, where you're standing up out of the turret. And I was standing up out of the turret. And we come across a wadi, and as soon as we hit the wadi, only thing I remember is hearing a loud boom, almost as if you're driving past an 18-wheeler and all the tires on that truck blow out at one time. That's what it sounded like. It was like a loud pop, boom. It's not your typical, in the movies, like, it was a poo. And I remember this chemical sensation, man, like burning. You couldn't breathe. And all of a sudden, the platoon sergeant, our platoon sergeant, who was in the TC seat, the passenger seat of the truck commander seat, starts radioing contact IED. And that's whenever I realized we just hit a fucking IED. That's what that was. Dude, I remember looking down because you always hear, people losing limbs and you don't know you're hurt, looking down to see just what was going on, right? The driver, who was from the unit that we were replacing, who swapped with my buddy at the last minute, he was fucked up. I mean, he started backing the truck up, and as he started backing the truck up, he started to lose consciousness and went out. Yeah. So he backs up a little bit, and then he's unconscious. And then, and that was his second time to hit an IED while he was in country, so he was jacked up. I ended up sustaining a few minor injuries. I mean, I was very fortunate. I injured my ankle because I'm short. I was standing on these ammo cans, to try to really get some height out of the turret. And when the IED happened, I lost my footing and basically twisted my ankle. And I think it was a dislocated tendon in my left ankle. But ultimately, okay. Now the truck that we were in the convoy where we lost a guy, they hit an IED. They did not have a mine roller in front of the truck, which the mine roller is just something you attach to, which goes in front of you. So our IED, actually, it was a pressure plate IED. The mine roller was digging through the sand. It scooped up the pressure plate while it was turning, and it brought the pressure plate to the front of our truck and set it off and basically blew up right in between the mine roller and the front of the truck. The truck that was hit didn't have a mine roller, and it was a Crow system, and it was so powerful it blew the doors open and rolled the truck over and dumped Corporal Frank Gross out of the truck and simultaneously squished him.
Holy
so
crap.
it was it was that moment, where you're like, shit, it's real. I'm here. It's real.
And that style of fighting, like EFBs and IEDs, it's a whole different ball game when someone get hit by an IED. I mean, you're talking about firefights and having the strength to move and having the strength to run away and turn around and being able to have tactical movements. When it comes to an IED, that thing goes faster than light. It is, as you said, it's like a boom. It's a second. And that second just knocked everything out. I think it's the most vicious fighting style I've ever seen. Right?
Yeah.
That's why I always go back to saying, like, guerrilla warfare. It's scary in a way that it doesn't take long. It's a hit and run. It's a fast few seconds, but the amount of damage you take in these few seconds is horrendous.
Right. And then there's no one around, to fight back at. That was one of the most frustrating things. I'd rather be shot at and see them shooting at me and us exchange, fire at each other than that. I mean, it was planned. And plus, there could be people out there watching and from local villages, and you don't know if they're good or bad, right? But someone saw our convoy coming, and when they attacked the lead convoy, they knew that a secondary convoy was going to come right through there, basically, and buried a secondary IED, expecting the attack. So they know what they're doing.
And these styles didn't come from nowhere, man. These styles were taught by Iranian Revolutionary Guard. They helped the elements in Iraq do that. And it's kind of interesting you mentioned that in Iraq and Afghanistan, they use the same exact style. How do they really communicate with one another, right? It's two different people, two different backgrounds, two different cultures, and they fight extremely differently. Right. These styles were taught to the enemy that in Iraq, same exact thing you mentioned. We will get hit by a car bomb. The car bomb will blow off, few people will die, and then the rest of us will go out, and then the second car bomb hits.
Right.
Like you go out there trying to evacuate your injured people and the people that are dying, and second car bomb comes through.
Man.
Yeah. Blows up. That was the most scary thing. Every time a car bomb blew up on my checkpoint in Iraq, that was not the biggest fear for me. The biggest fear for me was for the secondary car bomb. And when it comes in pretty fast. And I've been in this situation multiple times. I
Yeah.
learned over time the first explosion is not the last one.
Yeah.
The second one is the most scary one. So they actually, what they used to do, they used to use car bombs with less explosive, blow it up, hit the first few soldiers you have at the checkpoint, and then the second one comes in like a tractor trailer full of C4.
Wow.
And that thing is like a nuclear bomb going off. I mean, that's the time you'll see concrete barriers breaks in half. You'll see nothing really can save you from that, man. And I would never forget that scene. The scene of when a bomb this strong blows up at the checkpoint. What happens to the people? You would think that you're coming out for people who are bleeding? No. You would think that you're coming out to save people who are injured or have a couple injuries in their body. No, you'll come out and you'll see people with no clothes.
Wow.
The clothes was
Yeah.
stripped out of their bodies and the skin start getting melting. So when you go to put your hands on someone that just got hit by a really strong big car bomb, right? I want you to think of that moment. I want you to think of that you are approaching a person that is completely naked. The clothes just kind of went out. You don't know what happened to it. You can see little small pieces left of the clothes, whether it's like an underwear or something. And then when you come to try to evacuate somebody, to move one person to another, I want you to think of the human grease on your skin.
Mm.
It's one of the scariest, worst smells you could ever experience as a human being. When you smell other human beings being burnt, it is horrible. That was just like, I would never forget that feeling, right? And believe it or not, every time a car bomb went off, nothing scares me other than that.
Wow.
What you're about to do, it takes guts to do, right? You're looking at a burning human being. And that human being is not responsive, whether it's moving fast, whether can't see where you're coming from, doesn't know if you're a good person or a bad person. And you're trying to save a person in that status. It's just like, I mean, we used to have combat medics, but when a car bomb like that blows up at a checkpoint that's extremely busy, do you know the amount of people that are injured? Every single one of you are going to turn into a combat medic.
Wow.
Perhaps everybody. Like you go out, and I will never forget in 2004, I had one of these big ones blow up. You go out and you actually have to make a choice who you go pick up. It's multiple people. Who do you want to go help, right? Who's really injured the most, right? And then some people like just kind of, they will be able to get up and run around. They don't know what they're doing, right? And you have to like, that's the thing about like when I say like that the time of war, when you're talking about IEDs and car bombs, right? A lot of people said, I was in a firefight. We stabbed each other face to face. I would have loved to do that. Because when it comes to an IED or a car bomb exploding and that shit, what do you do to stop that?
Mm-hmm.
What do you do? Right?
Yeah. And in Evan's case, he didn't even know if there was going to be like an ambush afterwards or anything, right?
Yeah.
So
And
what do you
that
do?
was
What
the
do you do
whole
after you get
reason
hit?
why we were running in there to provide security, was the ambush factor, like you just mentioned.
Right. So what do you do after you get hit yourself? Do you form up security around your vehicle?
Yeah, fortunately, we were traveling with a few people. We knew we were going into a scene where there was a KIA and other people injured. Our vehicle was able. We also had EOD out there with us. The explosive ordnance disposal. They had a robot where they could send it forward and look, for any other possible threats. But we were able to, because our vehicle, I mean, it was leaking radiator fluid and we weren't super far from the fob. We detached the mine roller and they drove us back immediately to the fob, and the driver, they had to put him in another vehicle, carry him separately. Someone came and drove our vehicle that wasn't injured from one of the other vehicles in the convoy, further back in the convoy, and got us back to the fob and medical attention immediately. So the driver was ended up medevac to Kandahar, and I honestly, because he was from another unit, never heard unfortunately what happened with him. But
Yeah, I was going to ask you if you made it.
I believe he did. I just don't know what kind of condition.
Mhm.
He wasn't. He was alive, but like I said, unconscious, and I think maybe suffered some pretty bad TBI, traumatic brain injury. You were talking about the VBIDs, Hamady, and we didn't have a bunch of VBIDs in Afghanistan. It wasn't the
Yeah.
common, method of attack. But there
Yeah.
was one incident that I think made Fox News while we were down there. We were on the FOB, and because they also attack their own people, you see that a lot with the people that don't support the Taliban. They end up getting attacked. We heard a loud explosion right by our FOB, and our went into code red. Everybody's running around. Someone had driven a VBID into a gas station down there in a crowded area during a crowded time, and it blew the whole gas station up. And because they didn't have any medical services, people were flocking to the front gates of our FOB, right,
Ooh.
trying to get in. So they made the call to start letting people in for medical attention. This was before we hit the IED, so this was maybe a week or two after we got to our FOB. They were just laying bodies out, right? And we didn't know. They were unidentifiable. I mean, you don't know if they're American or local nationals, because you can't, that's how bad you can't tell, like you were
Wow.
saying with the clothes. Clothes gone, charred to the bone. You can't even tell what nationality they are, okay?
Wow.
And I remember the sergeant major coming up to me and going, Slaughter, I need you to stand by these bodies until we can figure out if they're ours or theirs. Because, and I don't know as much about it as you probably do, but I believe with the Muslim culture, after someone dies, there's something pretty immediate that needs to happen
True.
as part of a ceremony. So they were kind of, some of the family that were there with them who felt like they knew who they were,
Yeah.
were wanting to take them,
Yeah.
and because they were coming to us for medical attention and we didn't know what was going on at the time or who was attacked, we had to wait a little bit. And I remember Sergeant Major came up to me. He knew I was new in combat, never been deployed, blah, 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 never seen a dead body like that before. He says, Slaughter, I need you to guard these dead bodies. You don't have to look at them or touch them. Just stand here and don't let anybody near them. And I was like, Roger that, Sergeant Major. As soon as the Sergeant Major walks away, one of the senior medic comes up to me and goes, Slaughter, I need you to help me carry this body into the aid station. And I was like, fuck. So I had to get my hands dirty pretty immediately. But
Yeah.
they ended up being local nationals, sadly. But that was a huge, when you talk about VBIDs and what you described with the
Yeah.
VBID incident, man, I mean, that's it to the T. That was the only experience we had with a VBID in country,
Yeah.
at least in my experience in Afghanistan. But it was exactly how you kind of described it there.
Seeing death, bro, affects you to the rest of your life.
Yeah, for sure. I still remember,
I believe that, when you see death at that point, at that level,
Yeah,
you see people dead from a car bomb or an ID or multiple people injured, and the trauma that changes you.
for sure.
I have seen multiple of the 5 years war that I was there, and the one that hurt me the most, that got me the most, it was a Katyusha rocket that was supposed to fall on my checkpoint, and it fell about 500 meters short, where they had a little daycare where I crossed from my checkpoint, and it was the hardest thing I've ever witnessed in my whole life.
Yeah.
And the first people responded to that event was myself and a staff sergeant from the 101st.
Yeah.
I went in, and it was children. It was a lot of children and a teacher. It was a male teacher that was the only survivor of that attack. They were all playing outside, and the Katyusha rocket went down in the middle. And I went in, and I've been in previous situations, but I've never been around like kids that been in like shredded, right?
Yeah.
And I went in because I kept hearing the voice of someone screaming in the back, and it was a teacher, a male teacher in his 30s. And I went in to try to carry him to get him out, and his legs was only attached by a very small tissue.
Mhm.
And I looked behind me, and the staff sergeant from the 101st was frozen at the beginning, like literally at the entrance of that daycare. All I see is this 101st NCO guy stopped, silent, not making any noise. And I never saw that guy again.
Hmm.
He was evacuated out of the country immediately. They thought he was going to commit suicide.
Mm.
And the most painful day of my life was that day. You know, I could have lost every single soldier of mine. I could have gone and hurt myself. And I was at the front checkpoint, and I heard the rocket come through. Like when a Katyusha rocket comes through, it's very loud. It's not a mortar. It's a very strong ballistic missile. And when it came flying, it hit the ground. All I remember is that my mouth was full of sand because I had like all these jerseys, like barriers right in front of me. It was full of sand, and the Hiscos that was full of sand, and too much sand jumped in and I was trying to process into where that fell, right? I was like, it fell in the homes, probably fell in a couple of these homes, you know, and it was right in between these homes, this little private daycare.
Mhm.
And it was right in there. And I still remember, and it was about 9:00 in the morning.
How many children do you think?
It was about 20 to something children
Wow.
died, man.
It's crazy.
Golly.
And they were all done. There was no life.
Mm.
The only person I heard making a noise was the teacher, the adult.
Mm.
And we went to carry him, and I just didn't know. Like I had some of my soldiers backed up a pickup truck to take him to the U.S. Military Combat Hospital in the Green Zone, which was about 2 miles away. They backed up the pickup truck, and I went to carry him, and his foot was right. His right foot was right by his hip.
Mm.
It was only being held by small tissue in the knee. Like everything was just out. So when I went to carry him, how injured he was, his stomach, everything was out.
Wow.
When I went to carry that, when I tell you that, like first time in my life putting my hands in between his body, right? And I just didn't know how I can carry that guy, right? I kept screaming at my soldiers, like, give me a hand, right? And they're like, what do we touch? There's nothing. Like everything is just gone, right? Everything is just dislocated in a bad way. And somehow 4 of us got to a way to carry him. He was a little bit heavy set guy. Put him on he was dead. He was barely he had a little bit on him, right? Body-wise, he was dead.
Mm.
And we drove really fast, and my uniform, everything was just done. And I had to throw my body armor away after that. And I drove him to the hospital, and they announced him dead right away. He was dead. And it was the most difficult situation for me to go back to the checkpoint, man.
Yeah.
You know, like every single day from that date, I went out and I said, that should have been me. You know, like the guy who shot it should have gotten it right. You know, if I died, my soldiers died, we're meant for that.
Yeah.
But how do you move on from there? You know, I would never forget that staff sergeant from the 101st. I remember his face. I remember exactly what he looked. And all I remember is like me screaming, and I look to the right, and that dude is frozen. What he saw, and I remember him pretty well. He have showed me pictures. He was from Kentucky. He have shown me pictures. He has kids their age.
Oh man.
And all I remember is that dude standing looking at me and I'm talking to him. You know, like I known the guy. He was deployed with me for a year, almost. And I look back at the guy and I look at him and almost like his body was standing there. He was gone.
Mm.
He was not there anymore. And when I went back to the checkpoint, I was like, second day, I was like, what happened to him? And they're like, he's gone. His gun was taken away from him. And he was sent out of the country. I think the mental shock he took that day was bigger than him. You know, even for me, I was already in blood. I was already in war. I've seen death. I've seen multiple thousands of dead bodies, but I was not ready to see dead children.
Is that a pretty common thing to have somebody shut down like that?
It happened before, but that was the most scary I've ever seen.
Yeah.
When you know a guy that can talk and a normal guy who can joke around and speak to you, and the moment he sees something that, I mean, there was 20-something children slaughtered in the ground, man, in pieces. And you look into it, you'd be like, that was me. That was my day right there. That day I should have died. You know, that day was meant for me and 5 others to die, right? And instead, that thing fell short. And where it felt like it fell right in there. It could have fell anywhere. And if you look in my MOD checkpoint, if you go look in the video, it's the checkpoint and it's the beginning of a bridge. You know, the beginning of a bridge that's going up and small homes where that daycare is right on the other side. That's all it is. Anywhere else is nothing important.
Wow.
And it fell right in there. And when it fell and hit, literally my heart was like, if it hit one of the homes, maybe there's a couple members in that home, 3-4 people dead, right? But the moment I walked in, man, the moment I saw it was in the daycare. It was one of the hardest things, man. I still have contact with the 4 guys that actually helped me carry the body of that teacher. And it's just a day we never forget, man. The day that, you know, you went and you know, we're talking about like things that mess up with you to the rest of your life, things that really just fuck you up.
Yeah.
Right? Like, this is it. For me, that fucked the shit out of me.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And, you know, when I saw it, fuck, man. I mean, that was shit, children. Do you know, like, I didn't want to be there when the parents had to come over to get the body.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to be there. I just went back to my office and I shut my door. I don't want to be involved. I was the fucking command sergeant major there.
Yeah.
It was my job to be there, and the least I could do is just be there, right? And I couldn't do it, man. It was difficult. I didn't want to see the mom and dads coming over to get those bodies. Like, fuck, I can't do it. So yeah, man, that shit like fucks up with you the rest of your life.
Oh, yeah.
And there's no way you can move on from it. So when he talks about, like, you know, that all the shit that he went through, and that minute, right? That minute it happened, or that ID, or that explosion, or that car bomb, it's a minute. It's a fast few seconds, but how is it gonna go with you? It's gonna stay with you the rest of your life. There is no right click and delete in your life that you can do to delete that and say it didn't happen, right? I mean, I try to sit and pretend to the rest of my life that this shit didn't happen that day, right? And I wish I can take the whole entire pain from that war, but minus that day. And that's the shit you see, man, a war. And Evan, I wanted to ask you about this. When did your PTSD start hitting your heart?
So, you know, that's such a controversial topic. I mean, PTSD and you know, you come from a unit with guys that are been deployed 2 or 3 times, right? All male unit for us, you know, at the time, and I don't know if it's changed since. Combat units are all male, you know, and you got that mindset, tough, you know, this is what we're here for, blah, blah, blah. That military mindset. I didn't realize I was having any issues until I got back. And me and some of my buddies went to a baseball game, a minor league baseball game. It was the Round Rock, what were they? the Round Rock Express, right there outside of Killeen, halfway to Austin, Texas. They had a little minor league team, and we go, and I guess they do fireworks every game. Not just the 4th of July, not special events. There's fireworks after every game. And we're on our way out, and boom, we're right back in country, and then boom, fireworks. And I remember about hitting the ground, and getting under a chair and looking for cover and doing all these things. And then I noticed I started having issues driving on the interstate. I did a lot of driving after I was, injured in combat. I had to wear a boot over my ankle for a little while. I stayed, finished the 12-month deployment, but for a little bit, I was moved to a driver because I couldn't really dismount. My ankle was jacked up for a lot of it. And so I was doing a lot of driving. And driving in a combat area, especially when there's only one paved road and you could be passing, and there's no traffic laws really. You just drive on whatever side of the road. There's no speed limit. You'll be going along and you'll pass a Mercedes-Benz 1 minute, and then you'll pass 4 people on a motorcycle the next minute, and then you'll have a jingle truck headed straight for you, and it's like they're playing chicken with you almost to get you to dip off the road and roll your vehicle over. So it was combat. It was combat when you were driving. So I realized when I would get on the interstate a lot back home and drive, I would drive like that. Like my life depended on it, aggressively flying from one area to another, and then it hit me like, this is what PTSD looks like. It doesn't have to be this big. And there were some nightmares at times and this and that, but I think anybody that's in a combat area, no matter what, your MOS is or what you did, is going to have some of that, because it's like the what if this happened kind of thing. And you go to bed with that mindset, and then you're having some, but it was more of like the things I didn't like going to crowded areas. I didn't like going to the mall. I didn't like being around a bunch of people. I didn't feel safe. And I think a lot of that, I think some of that's okay. I think that's normal to go from an environment like what you were in war, and then come back home and to not have any issues would be abnormal to me. Does that make sense?
It makes sense.
I think you should have some issues.
I think the older that I'm getting is the harder that for me to be around crowd.
Yeah.
It's like it's terrifying for me now to go to the mall. I don't know how to explain it.
I'm the same way, dude.
I don't know why your PTSD would get worse as older as you get. I don't know what the medical terms to that, but crowds does scare me.
Yeah.
I have a hard time.
I'm stressed out. I just don't want to be in that, So I'm with you, dude. But that would be probably the first signs that I would say that I was having some issues, And I think a lot of guys are, and they just don't talk about it.
It's like that moment when you process it all, right? It's like crazy how it comes in, right? PTSD, you come out of war, you're not processing anything, and then just 1 minute, it hits you, and you start processing all of it.
Yeah.
I'm in this age, 37 years old. I've been out of the fight for a long time. And I can tell you, it have hit me harder in these last few days than it ever been. In the last few months has been hard to sleep, a lot of dreams, a lot of things. And I kind of don't know, man. I'm not experiencing that, mental health kind of sector of how this works. Yeah. But it really is just kind of feel like I started to feel that I have a hard time being around people. I have a hard time being around crowd. I have a hard time handling people. My patience are a lot less. My sleep is horrible. And I think that it's like, I feel like within myself that I still haven't processed what I went through to this day. I would admit it. I have not processed any of the traumas that I've endured in the Iraq war that I've been through.
Yeah.
And it's hard, and it takes a lot of courage to say it, but yes, I admit that I have not processed any of the trauma that I endured. And I try my best to pretend that some of the stuff didn't happen, and unfortunately it did.
Yeah.
So like you dealt with PTSD. And I know that you hit a dark spot in your life.
Yeah.
and you went to a very, very dark spot, which is scary. When you told me personally about it, what was the details of that, and what was going through your head at that point?
So, whenever I talk about this part of my story, I always want to make sure to say that, I don't blame my addiction issues solely on combat. I think that's an easy out, if that makes sense. It would be easy for me to say, yeah, I came back and I struggled with drug addiction because I went through this. And people go, hey, well, we can't blame you for that. There was addiction issues in my family history, you know, which I think plays a big role. My father, who is sober now, struggled with addiction issues. And I think there's some genetics to that, right? Me going through high school, I partied too hard. I abused, painkillers in high school. I was partying. But when I joined the military, I got away from that. Um, it came back whenever I got injured in Afghanistan because I was prescribed pain medication, right? I came back from Afghanistan. I'm in America, not blaming the government or anything like that, but they have certain protocols they have to do. Like if you were injured in combat, they're going to send you, and especially as your active duty military, they're going to make sure you get the help you need, right? I was on Valium for issues, being blown up. I was on painkillers big time for my ankle, which I was having, legitimate pain from. But that turned into me abusing it because I found a way out. I found an escape again. It was like, this is comfortable. I can go through life numbing my existence, and this works. This helps me just coast through life, kind of like what you were just saying. I don't think I've ever faced and dealt with some of the stuff that you went through. I was doing the same thing, you know. I was just using opiates and Valium to help mask that, right? So I got deep off in struggling with pain pill addiction, especially as I got out of the military. I left the military with a bad pain pill addiction.
It's a I don't know how to say it, man, but I'll say this: it's like it's an easy way out, right? When you go towards
Yeah,
the addiction route, you go towards alcohol route. When you go towards drugs, it's the easy way out, right?
yeah,
It's like almost like you're giving up. You
for
can't
sure.
fight no more. You feel like you're not really fighting. You're giving up. So it's easy to numb yourself. It's easy to get addicted to something so you can run away. And unfortunately, nothing out there would help you other than facing it. Nothing.
Yeah, and it was a long, hard road figuring out what you just described, right? You talk about that rocket being meant for you guys. For a long time you struggle with, well, hell, these kids took the blunt of that. That was meant for us. We should be dead. Well, I'm thinking the same thing after hitting that IED. Damn, I really skated by. I should be dead. So then you take that mindset into your everyday life, or at least I did. Like, I'm on borrowed time. I'm going to live every day like it's my last. And when you have that mindset, in my opinion, that's a very dangerous place to be. It's
Very.
like hitting that fuck it button. Every day when you wake up, I'm going to hit that fuck it button. And that's what I did for a long time, or at least for a few years after getting out of there. Just lived every day like it was my last. I found something that worked temporarily, and then eventually it stopped working, and I
How
just found myself more miserable than I was prior to that.
how many years were you dealing with addiction?
It's been on and off in my life probably since I was, you know, definitely before the military a little bit, a couple years there, partying in college and stuff and doing too much stuff. But post getting out of the military, it was maybe 3 or 4 years probably on and off until I
Wow.
finally got some help.
Wow, man. It takes a lot of courage, bro.
So, how did you get help, and what did help you?
So I was very fortunate to have people in my life, good friends, true friends that I could be honest with, and I think that's crucial for me. I'm a big proponent of that now. Have some people in your life that you can be honest with, that you can get real with. Because I had people in my life that I was scared to get real with. I didn't want to, for some reason, be honest with my parents. I didn't want, because I was scared of what they would think,
Right.
I was married at one time. I didn't want to get honest with her because I was afraid of losing her, which in reality, if I would have just done that from the beginning, it probably would have worked out,
Right.
So I had some friends that recognized that I needed some help, and they came to me and gave me the option to get help. And I was fortunately at the time in a place where it had gotten so dark that I was like able to admit, hey, you're right, I do need some help. Because I'm that guy, and I don't know if this is like a military mindset or not, but I'm that guy that doesn't need your help, because I got this. I'm a man. I'm going to get through this. I'm going to do. But dude, I learned, and this is a big part of what I do now with my social media, or try to, I learned that honestly, that's just weakness. That was weak. That was me being weak, not admitting that I needed help. I found real strength whenever I got honest with somebody and said, hey, I need some help. You're right. And I went to a treatment center here in Alabama that was 3 months long, and it changed my life.
So
Is
you
it
took too much loss
Yeah.
before you really went to that.
Yeah. Yep.
Was
for
it
sure.
was it a civilian treatment center or military?
It was a civilian treatment center. I have been to before I got out of the military, they sent me to a little 2-week deal, basically to try to, I think it was PTSD related, but also to try to help me get off the high dosage of pain medication I was on and get to something I could sustain every day.
Mhm.
It was 2 weeks long. It was another check the box on the government checklist kind of situation, honestly. And all I did was go right back to abusing opiates after that. But this one was civilian led. It was actually nonprofit, which is big too. So they don't even take health insurance. Sometimes, from my experience, from what I've heard, is some of the places that take health insurance can be more about the money, because they charge a bunch of money and the health insurance pays it. Not all the places are, but just from what I've heard, this was not for profit. You pay out of pocket a few $1,000, and it ended up being what I needed in my life.
So were you able to stay clean after that treatment?
Yeah,
And how
I
long ago
was.
was that?
Now that was, I graduated from this treatment center. So actually January 17th, it'll be a year since I've taken any opiates.
Wow.
Wow, man, it takes a lot of courage for what you have done. So how did you find humor? How did this humor come through? I mean, look, you're funny as fuck. All the content you made, you got my attention in the first one. And as soon as you made fun of CrossFitters, Mike has a big time. By the way, my co-host is a CrossFitter, big time. He's a coach. He's a CrossFit coach. And you know what?
I was going to ask if you'd seen the content, if you'd seen the
I saw a little bit of it. I need to do a deeper dive on it.
I'll tell you what, man, these videos are ridiculously funny, right? And I encourage Evan. I said, you need to write comedy. You're meant for this. And he was like, I want to lose weight, but now, like, what do I do? Yes, that is your character, because you are the equivalent of Fluffy. You're like the veteran Fluffy, right? So I was thinking of him like, I kind of like loved his character. I loved everything he was doing. And when he told me the story, it was extremely touching, like why he got into it, right? So Evan, what made you get into this? Like, tell me the story into how you got into this.
Man, for real, it all ties together for me. Looking at my life and kind of what I did. Like I mentioned to you, growing up, I was always the guy joking around. I was always funny. My mom was always very involved in drama and like drama stuff. She did some drama in college. She wrote, does a lot of the plays for her local church. She's just always been very theatrical, and I think I got a lot of that from her. But I've just always been the dude who was funny, and it wasn't until I sobered up and got to a place where I could start loving myself that I realized that, man, I want to use this humor not only, to make people laugh, but to try to push a positive message out there. For a long time, I didn't like myself, and I don't know if what that comes from. I think a lot of people struggle for that. I just didn't like myself. And even getting out of shape, whenever I sobered up, I found a lot of comfort in food, to be honest with you, which I think could be its own addiction. We've seen that in a lot of areas. But I found a lot of comfort in food, and I started gaining weight. But I was also at a place where I was able to love myself and finally be honest. I could be honest because I didn't care anymore what people thought about me, right? So I just started making these videos, started with TikTok, and I would put them on Instagram and stuff. And then I just kind of worked it to my niche. And a lot of it was just me making fun of me because I was always the new guy, trying CrossFit for the first time, getting back into running. I've been that dude. And then it started to catch on and had several videos go viral and people were relating to it. And I get a lot of people saying, dude, thank you. I wish I had the confidence you have. This inspired me to get back into the gym, and from those comments, I was like, well, maybe I'm onto something here.
I mean, you taught people to laugh about themselves, which I believe it's a great message. That you even teaching me to laugh about myself, right? Like I'm a guy with a very serious background, serious life, traumas and everything. But I think it's important that the message you carried is that it's important to laugh at yourself. Because I felt when I saw you, this was your runaway, right? This was the way you ran away from all the traumas you endured in your life, and you found a way to make other people happy.
Yeah. That was a big part of it, man. Yeah.
Have you seen that video by Matt Best and Derek White on how to be a CrossFitter?
Oh, yeah.
That is
old
the
school.
best
That's
freaking
old
video.
school.
Oh my God, yeah. It's hilarious.
Honestly,
like CrossFit, more like cross shit.
And your fake friends, right? Your fake friends that you're gonna come up with the membership. No, but I tell you this, man. Like Micah is a CrossFit coach, and when you made that video about the time, and it actually gave me a great Now I don't take these people at the CrossFit gym seriously anymore, right? Because of your video, right? Because I laugh, I get to see that the persona some of the people live in, right? And it really just reminds you to laugh at yourself, right? Like I now don't take things seriously when I go to work out, right? Like I was like, I don't want to hurt myself. I got to be careful. I'm not one of those guys that are 20 years old. You know what I mean? I got a lot of injuries in my body. I got to really, really be careful, and humble myself when it comes to that.
Yeah.
I'm not in that competitive environment anymore, right? And then you got the 20-year-old next to you that's running, saying, "What's the time? I got to finish in 13 minutes today. I can't go 10-second extra." And I'll be like, "You should join the special forces. You should go to selection." Right?
Yeah.
That's how you really know you're tough, right? And a lot. I think
you got
a lot
no
of
idea, bro.
it really is, and I think a lot of people relate to workouts, relate workouts to military, and I'm like, it's far away from the truth. Like your physical strength is only one of the things you really need. There's multiple requirements, including your mental, including everything about you genetically that requires you to be in these environments. And I got to say, man, I see a lot of people doing CrossFit think they're equivalent with a combat vet who's been fighting in the special forces or in the Ranger or in the infantry unit. I'm like, you're far away because some of the most powerful people I've ever in my life in combat happen to be an average looking people.
Yeah. That's kind of a pet peeve of mine because you see people civilians that have
Yeah.
never now I've served in the military, but I was never in combat.
Yeah.
But you see civilians, and they do Murph with the vest on, and it makes them feel all badass. And
Yeah.
you're like, oh,
Mhm.
this is the hardest thing I've done in my life, and my time
Yeah.
improved 2 minutes from last year. And they're talking all kinds of shit about themselves, and it's like, guess what? And now you get to go home and have a hot meal, a cold shower,
Yeah.
and a cold Gatorade. And,
Yeah.
and these guys
Get in your
overseas are,
ice bath. Yeah.
are still getting rained down on with IED, and it's
Yeah.
like, come on, you're a joke.
That's
Yeah.
a
Like,
good point.
don't. And what I hate about it too is when they post their times on Murph, like
Yeah.
all over Facebook and everything. It's like, no, Murph is not about you.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're
It's
taking
not
away
about
from
you.
the
It's
point.
not about
Yeah.
you. It's about
You
the
know.
pain, right? It's
Yeah.
about like the pain. It's for you to go through what they went through in only small amount of minutes.
Mhm.
And I think that, unfortunately, I think that it's a culture, right? They are not looking at military vets. They're looking at other athletes that are doing this. And CrossFit, not to throw CrossFit under the bus, CrossFit is actually one of the best sports out there for veterans who are struggling with PTSD.
Oh, I agree.
And that is like medically researched that I work with a clinic that I went for TBI. The reason why, because you can reach endorphins with CrossFit workout really fast. And instead of you like spending 45 minutes on that treadmill to get to that level so you can feel good, these guys can push you to the limit and you can do that in 15, 20 minutes.
Yeah,
How-
and I've seen a lot of guys relate to the camaraderie.
Yes.
You know?
I was about to
It
say the
relates.
same thing. Yeah.
Yeah, right. But there is the negative side of it that could also affect the combat vet that's struggling.
And the guys working out with the huge egos. That's
Yes,
yeah.
that
And-
could affect you.
And that's not every gym. Unfortunately, there's
Yeah.
a gym here and there that has that issue.
yeah,
My gym, we don't put up with that kind
yeah.
of crap.
I mean, it's
you know.
in a way. Think about it this way, right? You are a veteran. You are very competitive, right? The fighter in you is never going to go to sleep.
Mhm.
And then someone comes in and then they have that ego. It could push you to hurt yourself.
Right.
Because that person doesn't have, as I said, that person is not Hamity or Evan. That person has not been blown up by IEDs and car bombs and everything. That person is completely healthy 20-year-old running right next to you, right?
Right.
And then they put themselves against you, and that could affect you because you're not in the mental game of competing against a 20-year-old. So that's where it almost feels like CrossFit would be perfect for a combat vet who's struggling with PTSD and severe PTS, only if they're doing it with a bunch of combat vets. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
I feel like if you go do your thing with a bunch of combat vets, you're safe. There's no ego.
Well, that's
there's
like F3, right? Have you guys
Yeah.
done any research on F3? I mean,
I've
I think
heard
that
of
was
it.
started there in North Carolina by some special operations guys, right?
I've
And
heard
it's
about
Yeah, I don't know much about it
it's
though.
free. You know, you meet up at a different park. I've actually done it. Now, it's not all veterans that do it,
Yeah.
but you get a lot more of that. Like anybody's welcome. And someone leads the workout, and you know they come up with nicknames for each other. But it's like you were saying. I mean, I went to over Christmas break. My brother in Hendersonville, Tennessee, he actually goes to CrossFit Hendersonville, which apparently is a pretty decent CrossFit gym. You know, Rich Froning is in Tennessee, in Middle Tennessee area.
Yeah.
He's a big, CrossFit Mayhem guy. And I went to the gym and did two workouts with him, and it smoked me, And that's
Yeah.
what he was saying was the camaraderie of it is what really appealed to him. Now, he's not a combat vet or anything like that, so I could see how that could definitely be, something beneficial. Especially, I think for me, it would be nice to do some things with some combat vets. The Go Ruck thing
Yeah.
that they have out there. Where you're getting together and you're rucking is huge. But for me, it's more about, and I make these videos that are funny because I find humor in a lot of things, but I am also trying to get back in shape,
Right.
and it's the working out that's doing something for me as well mentally, whether it's with a group, whether it's by myself. It's just me trying to live a healthy lifestyle. And I talk a lot about the fact that the reason I even care about being healthy again is because I had to get to a place in my life where I loved myself enough to care about my health, if
Wow.
that makes sense. Because I didn't at one point I wanted to die. I didn't see there was anything to live for. And when you're in that mental state, why would you work out? So
Right.
I had to first learn how to love myself enough to where now it's like, oh, I'm cool with who I am now. I think some of that comes with age, but also through what I've gone through, and get to a place where it's like, hey, I don't care what other people think about me all the time. Yeah, I don't look like I want to look, blah, 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 but I'm okay. I'm all right.
You're in peace
Now
with
let's
yourself.
live a healthy lifestyle because I find joy in life now.
Do you feel like I've encountered quite a few people in the CrossFit community that struggled with addiction and formerly, and
Yeah.
they say that it's very helpful. Would you agree?
Absolutely, dude. Absolutely. I think it is. I think it's something that physically it does something to you. Obviously, it's good for you for a lot of reasons. Mental health, physical health. You got energy again. Now all of a sudden you're starting to get in better shape, and guess what? Now I want to eat better.
Mhm.
Because I want to fuel what I'm doing at the gym. I think some people, and I think it's rare, but I think the addiction type gene and mentality, like I was saying, I kind of got addicted to food there for a little while after I got off the opiates
Mhm.
because it was something that I was finding comfort in. So some people, I think, and I've got some people, that I know that have struggled with addiction that are now addicted to CrossFit, right?
Yeah.
Which it's a much better thing to be addicted to. Don't get me wrong. But
But
that
I
can
think
also maybe become a negative a little bit if it's consuming your life.
Yes.
right. I think
So I'm learning about
anything can be
moderation.
right.
Yeah,
But I think something to be said about the type of personality such as yours that is a little bit more prone to addiction. It's kind
yeah,
of like this all or nothing mentality, which if it's channeled properly, you can be a very successful person. Obviously, you
yeah,
find out now. I saw your Instagram went over 17,000 followers,
yeah,
and I don't know what your TikTok is at, but people are drawn.
56,000.
Yeah, people are drawn to that personality, and if you're channeling that personality properly, a good buddy of mine is a former addict, and now he's started his own business, and he's put that
yeah,
same energy, that all or nothing mentality into it, and
yeah.
he's just doing wonders with it. So I think there's a place for that personality as you've demonstrated, if it's channeled properly.
I agree totally, Mike. I
Yeah,
mean, you took the words out of my mouth, bro. Like that is I have taken that mentality into my social media game, into my comedy videos, into life. There's some areas I want to do better at, but I think you said it perfectly. Like, man, take that energy, and pour it into something positive in your life, and you start finding success. And that was my case with making these videos.
Mhm.
I'll tell you what, I have the next video for you, but you have to do it with me. You cannot do it alone. I think that we need to create a real combat vet experience for a CrossFit. We need to create like a CrossFit combat vet style
Yeah.
to civilians. So since they really, I see a lot of people in my gym, they dress very tactical, body armor, patches, everything,
Yes.
right? They look like they're ready to go to Solder City and start a firefight. However, I feel that we need to start something for them. We need to have some like flashbangs and some blink ammo,
Yeah.
right? And I will dress up in my Iraqi clothes and we'll just chase them around right through the wad.
Yeah. Separate them from their loved ones for a period of time. That's that's what a lot of guys can't take. They can't take being away from their family or their girlfriend back home.
Right?
Separate them from
Exactly.
their, it's funny you mentioned that because like I was saying, I went to do the CrossFit thing with my brother, and he's awesome. He's gotten all into it. He got the CrossFit bag for Christmas. And I went up there to visit him, and I always bring with me, I mean, I've done it since I got back from Afghanistan, an assault bag that I bought in
Yeah.
Afghanistan, right? And he saw my bag when we were going to CrossFit, and he goes, "Oh, you got a CrossFit bag?" And I was
Oh,
like, "Bitch, this is from Kandahar, Afghanistan. Like, this ain't
It's not
a CrossFit bag.
right.
This has more combat experience than you do. This bag,
But it doesn't say noble on it.
But it doesn't say noble or lone wolf or what.
It says Abgamble, right?
Yeah, it's got blood
Abgamble.
stains on it and smells like Kandahar. Like, you're not, it was
Yeah.
hilarious, dude. I was like,
Dude,
is that a CrossFit bag?
Dude, it's kind of hilarious, right? When I see that, it just makes me laugh. I'm not making fun of those people.
No, not at all.
You gotta be like motivated to whatever makes you happy, by the way, right? Like you gotta be motivated. But it was kind of interesting. I'm like, if you really want to have that badass experience, let's do this differently, right? This is not a 15-minute wad. Let's chase you around. Let's blow some stuff. Let's roll you through the sand and see how fast you still can be. You know?
Yeah.
So that's why I say what I say about this. Like it's interesting how people relate that CrossFit workouts or a WOD is compared to what you go through in the military. I'm like, no, not even close.
You could start a reality show called CrossFitter Goes to Boot Camp.
Yeah, and see which ones make it. Because I've seen some really in shape guys not make it. We had a guy fall out of SOPSI who was like top of the class. I mean, this dude was a beast. He's like 6'2", ripped, probably played sports in high school. We had to ruck 8 miles from Camp McCall to where we were going to go do the STAR course at. And this dude smokes it. We're rucking by ourselves. Go as fast as you can to get there. He's the first one there. As soon as he gets there, he falls out, right? They hit him with the thermometer, the old rectum thermometer, and he's got a body temperature of like 108 degrees. Damn. And they had to medevac him out of there, and he was dropped from the course because his body, I think he was from the north maybe in a lot of colder conditions. And, you're talking about the humidity in Louisiana, but I mean, hell, North Carolina gets hot too in the summer.
Hot too, yeah.
And he fell out, dude, as soon as he got there. So it would be a good reality show because you'd be surprised how many actually make it,
This is a public announcement. This is a public announcement. If you're a CrossFitter and you go to Special Forces selection, try not to be the first one to finish.
Evan, do you know how to tell the difference between a rectal thermometer and an oral one?
The taste?
It's the taste.
I remember hearing that somewhere, dude.
So listen, but I want to ask you this. Where do people find you? I know it's Fit to Serve. For anybody with Find You, look up Fit to Serve on Instagram or TikTok, which is he's in both platforms. But any other places? What are the plans for the future? Really quick, what is the plan?
I'm glad you asked that, man.
Yeah.
And I may have to reach out to you guys in order to make some of this happen, and get some ideas. I'm very new at this. People want merchandise, and I want to make them merchandise, I've got some really good ideas for some merchandise. I've also got some good ideas for some fitness clothes, that fit a little bit more comfortably for thicker guys like myself that are trying to get, in shape, but still want that athletic looking, exercise wear. So I've got a lot of things in the works. That's where I'm going next. But yeah, Fit to Serve, Fit, the number 2 Serve. You can find me on TikTok. It's actually Fit to Serve 1, the number 1 on Instagram.
Yeah.
So yeah, you can find me there. And also, like we discussed, dude, stand-up comedy. So I'm gonna keep you posted on this for sure. But I'm hoping one of my goals this year in 2023 is to do my own stand-up show. I'm gonna have some entertainment come down, invite you guys down. Would love to have you come to Birmingham and hang out for a weekend. I've got a venue, a friend that's got an awesome venue, and we're gonna shoot a little comedy thing, dude, and put it on YouTube, and maybe have some other entertainment, And
I'll be the guy to open it.
That's what I was gonna say. I think you should speak, dude. And
I'll be
have a good time doing it.
I will be honored to support you, brother. I will do whatever it takes. And that's why I said to you when me and you were talking on the phone, and I just said it to him. I said, Evan, you need to start making comedy. You need to start writing your comedy sketches and go on stage. That's what you belong. And he's like, oh, I'm going to do that. And me and him talked about a few things, but I cannot wait for you to do your first one. and perhaps I'll fly and I'll film it myself, right? I'll make
I
sure
would
that
love
this
that,
gets
dude.
done properly. But I tell you, man, you have that talent, and you're not just really providing a comedy and humor. You are actually helping a lot of vets like myself and Micah and other people that are going to resonate with you. They're going to find something they can resonate with. And, you got to continue. But you know what? For the one sketch with the CrossFit, you got to save that for me. That's when me and you do it
For
together,
sure. We'll
right?
shoot it. We'll shoot it whenever you guys come down here for the comedy special, bro. I got a
Yeah,
gym we
for
can
sure.
use.
For sure, bro. And I can't wait. And I think that you have a bright future as a comedian. I encourage you highly to really start writing your comedy. And I think that's the best treatment out there for PTSD or anybody that's struggling. If you want to get
Yeah.
out of the pain that you're dealing with, laugh about it.
Yeah.
Laugh about it. Take the humor side out of it. That's how you really find peace within yourself.
Amen to that, dude. One of the things I was gonna say is that when we were in combat, you go through all this hard stuff. Some of the stories we both shared, right? But
Yeah.
it's that group that you come back to, and you find a way to do what laugh, and you find
Yeah.
something to laugh about, and that just it's done so much for me in my life, and being able to bring joy to other people. I get so many comments where people are like, "Man, I was having a shitty day. Thank you for your videos." And I'm like, man, that's the best thing I can hear, because I can provide some laughter to you, and it makes the bad day seem less bad, I guess. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
I totally get it for sure.
One last question for you.
Yeah.
I'll ask you. What would be your message to a veteran that's struggling out there?
Man, weakness is not asking for help. That's what strength is. Strength is getting the help you need. And the other big part of that is that there's a life to live for. You know what I mean? It may not seem like it now. I was in a place for years where I was too much of a coward to kill myself. That's how I like to put it. But I couldn't get honest with anybody, right? Whenever I finally got to a place where it got so bad that I got honest with somebody, I discovered a life that I didn't think was imaginable. I didn't think this life existed. I didn't think I could find joy in regular life again. But it's out there. And it took honesty and realizing what true strength is. So any way I can help, I always put that out there, dude. I don't promote the whole fact that I'm a veteran on my videos, because I want people to see it. I wear a memorial bracelet from the time that, Corporal Gross was killed and all that. And veterans recognize that. You know what I mean? And I don't want to limit my comedy to just veterans, because everybody goes through struggles and we all need to laugh. So
I agree, brother. Well, this was amazing podcast, amazing episode. I think this is one of my favorites so far.
Oh yeah.
And I think even I opened up with him a lot, right, versus other guests, because I kind of saw what he, it's very similar to what I went through, right?
Mhm.
And I actually recognized he was a veteran through his video.
Nice.
And I literally asked him that question. I said, "Are you a veteran?" He's like,
Yeah.
"I am."
Nice.
And then he's like, "I'm a Purple Heart recipient." Right? And I was like, "Oh, you're a Purple Heart recipient." Like, that's wow. And that's really how I got him, right? Because I felt in that comedy and that humor, there was some massive pain behind it.
Mhm.
And when someone's been through it, knows this, can
Right.
sense it. And I literally smelt that pain in him. And I said, "That's the other side. Now, please tell me what the other side is like." And then when he opened up, that's when I realized who he really is, right? And by the way, I saw somebody criticize you. And I know you answered that back. And I wanted to make sure that I let you know how I felt about it, right? I saw someone criticize you. You did an amazing job by answering that person properly with respect, right? And I wanted to say this to you. When you're successful, a lot of people are going to try to find any reason possible to take you down. Not because of something you're doing wrong, it's because you would know better that they're dealing with their own demons.
Yeah.
And I saw that someone criticize the videos you were making, and I know a lot of people supported you, including myself, but don't ever pay attention to the negative voices that are
Right.
criticizing your content. They are a fan, and because
Yeah.
they're watching your content, even though they don't like it, they are still a fan. And I would treat everybody, whether they like it or not, as a fan. That's what I wanted to say to you.
Yeah. I appreciate you saying that. You know, it's funny because I almost look forward. I don't get a lot of negative comments given the
Yeah.
amount of reaction I get on my videos, but when I do, I almost get excited about it because of a few reasons. One, it helps strengthen me because it would be easy for me to go, fuck you, dude. You don't know anything about me. You don't know the fact that I've been in the military. You don't know the fact I've deployed. I've seen combat. You don't know any of that shit. And I could trash him, right? But what good does that do? Okay. So I look forward to these opportunities to share some kindness to somebody, right? And what's funny is that guy actually ended up messaging me, right? Apologizing. He started following me, and I made that response video, and I kind of felt bad for a little bit because I knew whenever I made that response video, I always pin the negative comments, or I try to. I pin any negative comments to the top of the comment thread. I respond with kindness, and I just let it go from there. And it's funny, you would be amazed. You know, you hear growing up, kill them with kindness, right? Kill them with kindness. And for a long time, I didn't do that because I was hurt. So hurt people. You hear that all the time.
Yeah.
So I make it a point, dude, when someone responds any kind of negative way, say, hey, thank you for commenting. I appreciate that. I hope you have a great week. I actually am trying to lose weight or whatever it is. And just be the person who gets to spread some kindness to that person's day because they're
I
probably
agree.
going through something like you said.
I agree. And I think that you suck the negative energy out of them. Like
Right.
they're coming to you because they need help. They're out there spouting negative energy on you because they need help. And by you responding with negative energy back, it's not going to help them. So I actually rather help people that do that versus not help them. And I noticed that a lot of people, even from overseas, would come in and like call me all kind of names, right?
Sure.
Call
yeah.
me traitor, call me sellout, kill me, whatever.
Yeah.
And I would just say, hey, man, you know what? I fought for my freedom. I got myself to where I am now. I hope that you do the same for you. And I hope that you can live a good life as well.
Yeah.
Done.
Absolutely.
Right? And they have nothing else to say to you. And then, as you said, they turn to a fan. Right? To me, negative or positive, if you are watching my content, then you are a fan.
Yeah.
That's exactly what you're benefiting me. I'm getting the view. Thank you so much for doing that. And you are a fan. I'm going to respect you for that. I'm going to appreciate you for taking the time to come over and give me what you think of it. I'm like, that's phenomenal. Because whether you like it or not, you're still giving me free data of what you think of my content. Simple.
Yeah. Thanks for commenting. You're helping the algorithm here. You're going to see more of my videos now, right? That's what I want to say is, by you commenting, you're going to see more of me now, unless you block me. But also, if it doesn't do any of that, at least it strengthens me. It thickens my skin. If you want to say something negative, bring it on, because I'm trying to grow as a person.
Well, I like your approach, Evan, because I've learned when I was young. I think my mother told me, like, if you can find that one person that's having a bad day, like that cashier at Walmart that snapped at you, and you can find a way to compliment her or somehow cheer her up, not only did you change her day, but you changed every other person she comes in contact with for the rest of the day.
For sure.
So by trying to change that person with the negative comment, you're also changing every other person that they're contacting too.
And people don't realize that, exactly like what you're saying. You don't know. You could respond negatively to that person like everybody else probably has that day and just keep this pattern of negativity going for that day. Or you can break the cycle,